On this meeting to order. Let me get to the right page, sorry. Roll call. Brian,
Present.
Vladimir,
Present.
Shelley, present, Steve,
Here.
and I am here. And we have the students from Polk School. They're going to stand up and do lead the pledge of allegiance for us.
Please take off your hats and hoods. One, two, three. I want to America and to the republic. God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. All right, can any board members want to comment on the agenda? No, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll
Oh, roll call, sorry. Brian,
Yes.
Vladimir,
Yes.
Shelley,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
I say yes. When we have somebody, one of our board members not here, we have to go through that process. Closed session, there's nothing to report from closed session. Superintendent's update.
Just a couple of things. As you all know, we launched our social media recently. If you were on our district website this past week and today, you'll notice that our district website has been updated. The content will continue to be refined and updated, but a great new, more modern look on our district website. And over the next 2 weeks, the schools will also be getting updated looking websites. So we're very excited about that. February 3rd, we have the several board members from El Camino Health coming to Egan for a visit to really understand how we're using our grant money to support the mental health of our junior high students. So thank you to Jessica and Shally, who will be there, and Carrie will be there. I think Catherine will be there. We have a whole team really appreciating the funding that we're getting from El Camino Health to support our students. And then wanted to make sure on your calendar radar on January 31st at 4 p.m. is our county office State of Education. I don't know if traditionally you've watched that broadcast. It used to be in public. It will still be, or in person, it will be broadcast at 4 p.m. They'll be live streaming it right on the SCOE website, but I think it's a great time to hear about some accomplishments and some looking into the future of education within our county. And then just wanted to let you know that I'll be leaving at the crack of dawn, probably before the crack of dawn tomorrow morning, to go down to Monterey for the superintendent symposium for the next couple of days. So I will be certainly reachable, but doing some learning and some networking for our district.
So, all right, moving on to Old School's presentation. Thank you.
Great. Well, it's been so long since we've been here. I'm very, very excited to present to this evening. Well, actually, I'm not doing the presentation. Our lovely students, we have 5 third grade students from Ms. Quigley's class. We have Barak, Max, Dean, Greenlee, and Ira, who are going to present tonight some work that they've been doing. One of the goals that our district has been working on this year is around project learning and for staff to have some professional development. And Ms. Quigley took that on and has had our children do an amazing project around tiny homes. And so I'm going to have Ira kick it off for us and share a little bit about what they learned in their project.
Welcome. We are from Mrs. Quigley's third grade class. We are going to talk about tiny house project-based learning by third grade of elementary. The driving question is, how can design teams plan and build a tiny home that meets the needs of their clients while staying within a 500 square foot limit? These are the project steps. First is the background. We learned about tiny houses. Second is the interview. We developed questions and interviewed our clients. Third was the draft. We made 2D blueprints. Fourth was the build. We built a 3D model. Special components. We talked to experts in architecture and design. We made slideshows about why we did it and how. And then we pitched all of our information and showed our clients what we did. And we watched videos on tiny houses about people who chose tiny houses to live in and about the benefits of a tiny home, including cost, environmental factors, and location constraints. Step 2, interview clients. We split into groups and interviewed clients and then used that information to make tiny houses. Rob's mom, Shania, came by to share her experience as an architect. She shared what it was like to be an architect, challenges she encountered while designing spaces, and the joy of creating. Shania also showed students pictures of her project she has worked on to inspire their creativity. Most special of all, she shared with the students a tiny house she had made in one of her first architecture classes. Step 3, the draft. We created 2D models of our clients' tiny homes using grid paper. We decided on a scale to make sure we would not exceed 500 square feet of inside space and 500 square feet of outside space. Step 4, build. With drafts at the ready, teams began building the 3D model. Students were given very little instructions or materials. They had to figure out how to achieve the model they wanted within the constraints of what they had. Students were only allowed to use tag boards, tape, scissors, and coloring items to make their model. As design team started their boards, a second expo came to visit. We acknowledged combined and discussed Hokuleo as an interior designer. We talked to students about the role of an interior designer and how she brings spaces to life to all clients. She encouraged the students to go big, be bold, and not speak to them constantly in their times. First of all, she had each group look over the boards and give feedback. While the design teams were finishing up 3D boards, they created a slide for visual inspiration for the inside and outside of the tiny home. These inspiration boards included what the exterior would look like, the interior and the outside space, color, and its use, which that would be included. Our final expo visit was to Brooks' mom, Catherine. She talked to students about the work of the decorator and how to put together the perfect pitch for clients. Her focus was on colors, finishes, and how to make 3D space. Wow, Catherine also met with each group to provide feedback and offer advice as students of their tiny business. To celebrate all of their hard work and to finally reveal their tiny home builds to their clients, we hosted a party. All of our clients, experts, LASD coach Grace Troy, and other district administrators were invited to celebrate students' work. So what did we learn? We learned listening skills. We met and listened to clients' needs and wants during our interviews. We also listened and learned from our expert visits. Speaking skills. We interviewed clients, met experts, and presented to our clients. Math. Math topics such as area, perimeter, measurement, multiplication, and addition were used during this project. Engineering. We had to problem solve, build, and create models to bring our vision to life. But wait, there's more. Red informed relationships with various staff members. They got to know parents of their peers on a different level. Students learned about this real world job that utilized the topics which they were engaged. Learners practiced new strategies on how to work together, each one and problem solve.
We wanted to, I am Mrs. Quigley, I teach these amazing students, and we just wanted to take a minute to express our eternal gratitude to our clients. We had a wonderful group of clients, including Mrs. Patel, and we had our hot lunch supervisor, Tony, an instructional aide, Michelle, our technology specialist, Michelle, our school psychologist, Alyssa, our librarian, Celia, and our administrative assistant, Lee. They were all of our clients that the kids interviewed. We had some amazing experts, all parents of children in the class. We had Baraf's mom, Shania, there she is. We had Rimi's mom, Jessica. And we had Brooke's mom, Catherine, all come and spend some time with us. And we are very grateful. And we also want to just give our thanks to the district. This whole project was possible from our PD days that the teachers get to go to, and this all came from Grace Choi's. It's integrating content and curriculum, project-based learning series that I'm enrolled in. So without Grace's help and support, this would not have happened. So we just want to give our thanks.
I have a question. What was your favorite part of the project?
My favorite part was building at the end so we can add stuff if we want to make it more creative. My favorite part was building and planning out where we were going to put. I just like the building.
That's okay.
I like the building and drawing on the houses and that's it. I like the outside landscape.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for spending your time here with us today. It was amazing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
How many on the team?
Oh,
3.
3 on the team, yeah. Do any of you want to quickly go over one of your? You can say no if you want.
You're ready. They're all good.
Just one, just one. So could you just tilt it towards us and give us a quick overview of what you have there?
So
Yeah.
this is a tower with a model house. It's small, so it's also with a pool.
Of course you did.
Okay, thank you. Cool. Okay.
And we brought all of the models in case anyone would, is it okay if we leave them here just for a little
I
bit?
can pick them up
Okay.
tomorrow morning.
Okay.
That'd
In
be
case
great.
anyone
We'd love
wanted
to
to
take a look
yeah.
afterwards.
There's
Was
one
it
of the
amazing?
basketball.
Beds, tables and chairs, a satellite and a pickleball court because
Responsive to their client needs.
Actually, a very real world issue though, because families want to build ADUs. for
Yeah,
additional housing. I'm very excited to see some of these.
Yes. It's amazing.
And one of the groups brought their 2D blueprints as well, so you can see that state. I really. Yeah, that around.
Wow. Nice.
we had to like calculate the inside, because we had to make sure it was within 500 square feet. So we used multiplication and like also addition and all that stuff.
Awesome, thank you so much.
So they have been so excited. They have another project they're going to be embarking on soon, and the other third grade teacher collaborating, and it's around.
It's around weather. We're going to be studying the patterns of climate change and how it's affecting the average temperature in the summer months and how that can affect our community at Oak School. And what we can do to make the environment more comfortable as the weather gets hotter.
So making our playgrounds better, and so it just really neat learning for all the kids, very, very rich learning experience. And again, really appreciate our district and our curriculum department making sure that they had something like this for our staff. So
Thank you so much. I'm happy we move on to the rest of our agenda. You're welcome to leave if you don't want to. All right.
Picture of it's with the board.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you want to check on our social media also? Yes. I your parent.
Come over here.
My newsletter.
They're your parents. Yes. We're not gonna be seen on. Should I turn the camera around?
Okay, ready?
Money.
Awesome, great, thank you so much. All right, moving on to the consent calendar. Anybody, any of the board members want to provide comment on the consent calendar? Steve? No, all right. Can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar? All right, Ryan,
Yes.
Vladimir,
Yes.
Shelley,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
that's 5-0. Moving on to employee requests to address the board, Mr. Hazelton.
Always clears it out.
Don't take it personally.
Yeah,
I should have said it right after your.
it's okay, don't worry about it. First of all, I didn't get a chance to say this at the last board meeting because it was approved after my spiel. But I wanted to thank the board for the investment in the teacher housing. As you saw when I presented the data around cost of living earlier this year, that housing piece was such a big concern for so many teachers, and they don't quite make little enough to qualify for the low income, but they don't make enough to always purchase a home in this area. So that investment is so powerful and really important. So thank you for that. One of my kind of roles this year has been digesting a lot of data. I'm often given a lot, and then it takes me some time to figure out kind of what all of it means. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is some of the data that I've been getting from CTA around where our district stands in terms of compensation in comparison to districts in Santa Clara County. And how CTA does this work is, as they are representing all these districts, they get access to all of the district budgets, and they have algorithms and programs that they use to then calculate all these different percentages. One of the things they look at is how much of a percentage of the budget are districts spending on certificated salaries. And what has happened in Los Altos over the past few years is that investment has gone steadily down. Right now, we stand in the lower kind of 8th of all districts that CTA is looking at as far as our percentage. Typically, the districts are spending around 35 to 42% of their budget on salary. That doesn't include benefits, obviously. And Los Altos is sitting right now as of the interim budget at 30.5%. And so this is obviously an issue that comes up in negotiations when we're talking about compensation. But what I wanted to do is kind of put this out there as a long-term goal that the union has, and I think also the district shares this view. And Sandra and I have had many really positive conversations around this. Kind of that this isn't going to be fixed with one raise. It's not going to be fixed with two raises. This is going to be a multi-year investment in our teachers. And there are some reasons why that percentage has gone down. I don't want it to seem like, you know, Los Altos is cheaping out on the teachers. I don't think that's it. What I do think is, as we've had senior teachers retire, their salaries can represent sometimes 2 times what it would be to hire a new teacher. So that cost obviously goes down as those older teachers retire. But when we look at other districts in this area, and one of the other data points that I have access to is what are the salaries? You know, where do we stand in those terms as well? And when we look at our comparables, and those are basic aid districts in Santa Clara County, we stand out of 13 districts, either 11th or 12th as far as compensation goes. With benefits, we do go up, and I want to give credit to that because we do have some pretty good benefits. But even when you look at that in package of total compensation, we're still coming out towards the bottom. And one of the things I don't think the community is aware of is where we stand. I think that the assumption is that our teachers are paid extremely well. We're in an affluent area, and you know that would make sense. But then obviously there are other concerns and there are other costs to the district that you know affect our ability to do that work. And so my challenge to you and kind of my ask is to really start to think about how can we look at this in a long-term way where we truly are able to retain and attract teachers. An example that has come up from a lot of teachers is they point to Santa Clara. Obviously, Santa Clara has a very different funding scale than Los Altos. But when we look at comparisons for, let's say, a new teacher coming into the field, the starting salary at Santa Clara for a brand new teacher is $89,000. The starting salary in Los Altos, I think, is around 63. So when that teacher is making that calculation about where they're going to go, I think that if they have that option, more often than not, they're probably going to go to that $89,000 job. Now, the goal of the union is not to get us paid at the same rate as Santa Clara, and I don't think that that's sustainable in any way financially. I don't think that that's realistic. But I think when we look at the benefits of working in this district, beyond just medical and things like that, but the community, the parent engagement, the students we teach, if we can get it closer, I think that that would be a more difficult decision for that teacher to make. And so I just want to kind of put that out there, have you consider it. And obviously this will be an ongoing conversation that we have over the next few years. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we don't have anybody speaking for California, the Student Employees Association. Now I'm so sure now to provide, we're going into community comment section. To provide public comment on an agenda item, speaker cards are to be submitted to the superintendent. Speaker cards will not be accepted once public comment begins. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Anybody here have community comments or stuff not on the agenda? This time is reserved for members of the public and employees to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board is not permitted to discuss or take action on non-agenda items, except to instruct the superintendent to review the matter further, report back to the board at a subsequent meeting, or place the matter on a future agenda. The board may make a brief comment or ask clarifying questions. Still no one? All right, moving right along. Action discussion item, mental health services partnerships update.
Hello,
Hi there.
hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Just to
We're
remind you,
glad you're here,
I'm
Catherine.
Catherine. And so it really takes a village
for us to support the student wellness and mental health here in our district. And tonight, our team, Claire, Aaron, and I will communicate how we leverage community partnerships to provide comprehensive services to our students.
The clicker is right underneath you there.
Careful you don't push the wrong button because it blows up.
No.
We don't have a designated. All right, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
So why school-based care? On-site student mental health supports classroom functioning and learning. School-based care exists in a student-centered environment that's actually designed for them. It's holistic. It can address a multitude of concerns that come up for kids, not just a set of symptoms. It's confidential. Extensive notes aren't taken or archived like in the medical environment. And since it's on campus, it's convenient, responsive, immediate, especially for kids in crisis. Medical care, as you all know, takes a long time. Also, services outside of schools are at critical capacity right now. And so we provide that critical link until such services can be provided. Moreover, and most importantly, it's the way of the future. California is moving towards a model where comprehensive mental health supports are offered at school for all kids, regardless of income and insurance status, similar to the lunch program. Our clinicians, and that represents a variety of folks, school psychologists, behaviorists, academic counselors, etc., are trained to identify emergent traumatic stress related to their developmental state. It's important to note that we understand that our students are not our patients and that the interventions that we follow, by and large, follow an educational framework that focuses on strength. Specifically, some of our kids need individual therapy, others need crisis counseling, especially in the middle school setting, while others do better with small group therapy. With school-based care, clinician communication with classroom teachers is very important. And the other piece, of course, is communicating these concerns and how school-based care, communicating that piece to our caregivers, parents, guardians, etc. So our goals are solution focused, usually short-term, given the high volume of requests for services. The need to partner with community agencies has become very important for us. One such partner is CHAC. Our partnership with CHAC and the LASD school psychologist focuses on the following. We identify needs, provide short-term school-based counseling. We identify the need for addressing emergent stressors versus a more long-term plan. And we are developing procedures to ensure that these students are being addressed. The student, as this slide shows you, is really at the heart of this. This is very different from the medical model, a model that I worked in for 25 years. So working together, LASD and CHAP have coordinated in-school and out-of-school care. We prioritize and triage the higher need students while also serving moderate and lower need students. And at times, we provide small group and SEL lessons in the classrooms. But CHAP addresses the needs at the elementary school level, and there was an additional need to address our middle school students. So El Camino Healthcare District supports our mental health counseling program at Block and in the middle schools. And this is, of course, addressing the specific issues related to the developmental state of being a teen, anxiety, motivation, grieving, transitions, friendship dynamics, and oftentimes stressors at home. How do you navigate that? And in addition, new to this academic year, as you so well know, we've made a direct partnership with Santa Clara County vis-a-vis the School Link Services Initiative. And that's my position. Which is a direct partnership with Santa Clara County, the Behavioral Health Department, Family and Children's Division. So overall, this is what it looks like right now. We have school psychologists in all 9 schools, CHAC clinicians in training in the elementary schools, and then we have our part-time therapists that are working in the middle school. And then in the middle school, we also have the addition of an academic counselor for each campus. That's 27 adults providing direct mental health services. And that's not including me, Jennifer Kay, Claire, Aaron, and Lola, our family engagement coordinator. All of us do counseling to a certain degree as well. So that's 32 adults if you count us. So the need continues to grow. And what other and who are the community agencies that LASD can look to partner with? Well, pretty well known in the community is Adolescent Counseling Services. They're based in Redwood City. They've been around for 40 years. They primarily work out of San Mateo County and the northern tip of Santa Clara County, but CHAC is a partner agency of them. And so they don't provide direct services in our geographic region. That said, ACS can still be a referral partner, just not a contracted service provider. So if addiction services were needed, we could still reach out to them. Cassie is another such group. They're based in Milpitas. They're open to contracting with LASD. They would hire based on our needs after a thorough intake. So they currently do not have a pool of candidates that they could send to us. Their pricing structure is based on how many FTEs, full-time equivalents. So our cost would go up substantially if we were to contract with them based on the number of what we have already. So overall, these were the only nonprofit groups that provide on-site school-based care that our team is aware of in our geographic region. But there are other resources that we need to consider and to take into consideration. Children's Health Council is well known for its affiliation with Stanford and excellent clinicians. We can develop this partnership further. And one of our clinicians over in the mental health counseling program is developing this partnership. But one of the things when I was talking to them is that they can provide a space. If we provide a space at school, they can beam in virtual care for the parents that are paying for this service. Why is that advantageous? Because if a child needs to be seen pretty regularly, like weekly, then they would lose less hours of school if we were to provide that space. So we could help facilitate that care. Otherwise, the child gets pulled out so frequently that they think about, going to maybe a homeschooling environment or otherwise. They are currently a referral partner, and that partnership will continue to grow. I think the board is already aware of this organization, Care Solace. They're a caregiver navigator service in both MBLA High School District as well as Palo Alto Unified. They are using Care Solace for their students and their staff. The idea is that you call, you say what your needs are, and pre-COVID, they would just kind of link you with a provider or send you a list. Post-COVID, it gets a little bit more challenging because those provider lists are full of providers that are overstretched. But the pricing is per student and per employee. Now, this is probably new to all of us. Aaliyah Innovations is for foster and unsheltered youth when behavioral issues emerge in the classroom. So Santa Clara County will arrange and pay for this online intervention. And we can leverage this as appropriate. The service is free to qualifying LASD service, and the SLS coordinator, me, would make that referral. And so, I looked them up. They seem really fantastic for the appropriate child. Obviously, an older child. Virtual care does not work well for younger kids, by and large, which is why a lot of the startups that started up for younger kids have not. Yes. So in summary, this is the landscape of applicable providers that specialize in school-based on-site services. Excluded are the numerous numbers of private clinician provider groups that are in the area. And they deal with either cash and or insurance, and we're not set up for that. I mean, many of you may know this already, that the Bay Area has some of the highest concentrations of psychologists and related mental health clinicians in the whole country. But they don't specialize in school-based care. So these are what we need for a successful partnership with contracted service providers: stable staffing, strong supervision, multilingual clinicians, and I will say that that's very hard to find. Knowledge of school-based services, which is utterly different than the medical model. Responsive and knowledgeable of our community. So looking ahead, we do see some emerging trends. We have more refugees from Slavic nations, as well as Central and South America, more unsheltered kids that are starting to emerge. Requests for basic needs, and by that I mean clothes, diapers. That would be the siblings, and diapers for our special needs population. Increased need for trauma-based services, that's post-COVID, as well as addressing the needs of refugees. So I do want to add that students often need both school-based and medically based mental health care, and we do see this. The school-based clinician can work in conjunction with the medical provider as long as the release of information is granted by the caregiver. School-based care is not meant to be a substitute for medical services. However, school-based care can amplify the impact of outside services by providing the environment where students can apply these new skills. So I welcome your questions and comments, and then of course we have Claire and Aaron here who can also provide the historical context. All right.
Do I have any clarifying questions? All right, looks like we don't have any public comment or discussion. Anybody?
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a big task to do all this coordination. One question I had was you're engaged in short-term school-based care. How does the handoff to long-term care happen if the child needs it?
Oh, in many different ways. So first, everybody has to be on the same page. So sometimes that doesn't happen. So your school-based clinician could say that, you know, this child needs care elsewhere, but if the caregiver or the parent doesn't agree, then that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That transfer to long-term care doesn't happen. But that's not the majority of cases, right? That's the minority of cases. So then in the case where both sides agree, you know, parents and school-based clinicians, then the problem is the enormous backlog where, and I have in my head all the different places that I can place a person, and who does it? I do a small portion. Claire does a lot of it. Jennifer Kay does a portion of it. So depending on what route they go through, it kind of depends on like the path that they take. So in my case, I usually deal with the students that get connected to county, because that's where a lot of my referral networks are easy to make. Whereas when you're trying to deal with maybe tertiary psychiatric services, they often would prefer going through the school psychologist. So the thing is that we never really hand off a child to a medical provider. Usually you continue to see that child in the school-based setting, but once medical services are deemed appropriate and applied, then you see the school-based counselor less.
Okay, all right,
So that's what happens, is that when medical services are provided for. And then there's all these students that are in the middle, right, that don't really have a psychiatric diagnosis, but then they also don't qualify for special ed. Then they're kind of in this limbo land, where we end up caring for them.
all right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments?
What happens to the kids that you're working with in the summer?
I can share a little bit about that. So, with chat or students who are seeing CHAC over the summer, if there is continued need over the summer, they would recommend, services through CHAC, over the summer. But if the students are in a place where they can stop their treatment and either resume in the fall or be terminated from counseling, then the, service providers should do that.
A lot of parents understand that school-based counseling ends in the summer, although there's a portion of these students that go on to summer school. And I don't think we provide counseling over the summer, correct?
Not like consistent, but crisis counseling and things like that will provide, yeah.
Okay.
All right, Steve, anything?
I just one early, when you started your presentation, you inferred the fact that there's going to be a California mandate for free mental health services growing across the state. Is there any trends there that you think are going to come that might impact the picture you painted for us?
Well, if we have a recession, that could certainly impact the plan. So what I was referring to is the rollout of wellness centers at school. Now, in our poorest districts in the region, they're already there. The idea was to get them in every district. So I would say that the debut of wellness centers in all California schools really depends on the state budget.
He's nodding his head.
You can't hear the rattling over the microphone, please, come on.
Yeah, it's a very interesting proposition, because when you start having the provision of medical services within a school setting, you have, that brings in the regulatory structures. So then all of a sudden you have to keep medical records, and they have to be secure. It's a daunting task. Because they're not talking just about mental health services too, they're talking to a certain degree about some basic primary health care services as well. But that's another discussion for another day.
Thank
you. All right,
thank you so much. Right, moving on to expanded learning opportunities program planning.
All right, well, good evening, and thank you for having me back. I told you when I was here last time, I'd be back for ELOP, and I'm not sure of my word. I'm actually here today to just kind of give a little review about ELOP, the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, and a little bit about what I've been doing this year, what we've been doing this year, and kind of where we're starting to think about for next year. So Sandra presented on this a couple times last year, I think, and then I think in the spring and then maybe even winter of last year. So you've probably heard of, I was going to do like a scale 1 to 5 of how much you remember, but I won't put you on the spot. But if you do remember, it's part of the Transforming California Schools of this expanded learning program. And this really goes into effect next school year. So when we think about expanded learning, they define expanding learning as before school, after school, summer, or intersession learning programs that focus on developing the academic, social, emotional, and physical needs and interests of students through hands-on engaging learning experiences.
Yeah.
Just a quick little definition, you know, but it's really exciting. And I think that what's great about it is that it gives us some options too of what that looks like, right? The before school, the after school, intersession, summer. It gives us the opportunity to figure out with our community here in Los Altos, what is best. And then really thinking about how the programs are student-centered and results-driven. And they include community partners, and complement, but don't aren't identical or replicate the regular school day. So I know that's like the teeniest, tiniest graph, and I apologize. But basically, the important thing is that number there in the corner of currently what are we getting from the state to support our ELOC. And this is like the formula, this is how they figure that all out. And it looks like what was allocated this year will be about the same number that's allocated next year is what they're really thinking. So what we received for the 22-23, that most likely will be what we receive next year as well. They really do it based on our student population, our unduplicated students, which I'm going to define for you in the next slide. But really takes into account, we get a certain amount of money for each of our students that fall into our certain categories of unduplicated. So that is how that number is determined. So unduplicated students, a student enrolled in a school district or charter school who is classified as English learner, is eligible for free and reduced price lunch, or is foster youth. So what it really means, I feel like it's kind of a complicated term. What it really means to, if a student is all three of those things, we only get paid once by the state for them. So they just count as one. And so those are, when you really think about it though, these are students that we are excited to be able to offer this extended learning opportunity to. The program intent is that we offer unduplicated students in classroom-based instructional programs, and then they have access to comprehensive after-school or intercession expanded learning. And next year, what really is going to be the big change from this year is it's TK through 6th grade. I'll talk a little bit about how we kind of took a little bite out of this year and really focused on TK. And if you remember, I talked about that during just a little bit at my TK presentation I did earlier. And then we'll provide the low income students and the families with no cost access to these 9 hours of school, or a 9 hour day. So 2 things to really think about is offering access versus providing it. So we have to really do a good job of recruiting, advertising, and those families that fall as our UPP students or unduplicated, we have to offer them all access to this after school expanded day. And then we provide access to any of those that say yes or request it. So I think that's my next slide. Some districts who have above 75% unduplicated students in their population have to offer it to any students. But we here in Los Altos have our unduplicated students below 75%, which means that we have to offer it only to our unduplicated students, and if they want it, provide them access. That's slightly different than this year too. This year they had that we have to provide for 50% of, so they're kind of gave us that roll on a little ramp too. So what does this programming possibly look like? On school days, it could be before school and or after school hours. But basically it's no less than 9 hours a day. So that's our core school day plus expanded learning has to equal 9 hours. And then this is a big part too, the 30 non-instructional school days, and they can be no less than 9 hours. They're in person. According to the state, they can be intercession in summer school, and we're really focusing on doing that during summer. So our summer school, we're really going to make sure we provide our unduplicated students with summer school opportunity. And fees cannot be charged for those unduplicated, those unduplicated students that fall under unhoused youth, foster youth, or students eligible for free and reduced lunch. So those 3 areas we cannot charge. And then there's ratios to consider when we're looking at programming as well. So 20-1 for grades 1 through 6 and 10-1 for grade TK through K. And that means adult supervision to child. So this is a very kind of a snapshot kind of glance of what our unduplicated student numbers look like currently in Los Altos with this year. So this is TK through 6th grade. At first I was gonna take out 6th grade, they're all shifting, but I think this gives us a nice big snapshot of a current school year. So low income students, I broke it down by school site, those that qualify, that are those free and reduced lunch, if there's unhoused youth and so forth. And then we have our students that are also just EL only, to kind of break those apart. So you can see across each school what that total number looks like, and then district-wide that there's about 342 students who fall under the unduplicated category that we would need to offer this expanded learning opportunity to. So what have we done currently this year? I had mentioned to you that we are currently giving this a little shot with our TK. So we're providing after school enrichment programs for TK students. We did when they registered in the spring, we kind of put that as a survey question of would you be interested in after school programming to try to get the interest there a little bit. I also had the TK teachers put that in their newsletter. And in each of those postings, it said, if you think you might be eligible for free childcare based on income and so forth, I gave them my contact email. So I was able to sign up a few that way too. And so this year we do have a few students who were paying or that are receiving the no cost childcare. And I am starting to really get into summer school planning as well. And then we also have amazing partnerships with our current on-site providers, Champions, Children's House, and the YMCA. So those were able to help us really provide that full 9 hour or just that extra time for our TK students. So I broke it down a little bit here. Like I said, I told you kind of the different ways we tried to get the word out there to the TK families. I definitely learned some lessons about being too broad with the ask versus really just asking one-on-one. But you can see here a number of TK students at each site, looking at the UPP or unduplicated students at each of those. Currently overall, this was back in fall, these numbers here, so they could be slightly different. But we currently have 2 students in our district who are receiving, based on their qualifications, a no cost after school care. So like I said, I would do things differently now of really making that almost that one-on-one ask, at least for all of our students who fall under that unduplicated umbrella. So next year, we are starting to really think about what we could do next year. And we definitely are in the next steps of looking at providing after school and summer school enrichment programs for TK through 6th grade students. And then we'll offer the free after school care for TK through 6 of families who qualify for the free and reduced lunch, foster or unhoused. And so knowing also how big those numbers are, we started to really think about what can our current already on-site providers do without them taking on these massive amount of students. And then some of them we really can't, right? Because of capacities, of facilities, of staff, of so many things. And so we definitely want to continue our partnerships that we currently have. And so that's Abracadabra, Champions, Children's House, and YMCA. So we want to continue those partnerships. And then we are right now exploring the idea of bringing on a new partner called Right at School. And so we're looking and we're talking with them to figure out if they can work in parallel at our school site. So they're not taking away hopefully any current students, but instead helping us reach our numbers of all those students that need to be offered the access. And so I keep saying it that way because we honestly don't know yet how many are going to say yes. And so right now we almost need to think like, what if they all say yes? Like that's where I don't even know how to play for that. But like, what if half of them, what if so forth, right? We really need to be able to think about how can we continue our partnerships and possibly a big increase in number of students. I'm also working on, like I said, developing the summer school plan, because all of those 352 kids, we need to think about them, and inviting them to summer school as well. While also looking at, in tradition, like we have traditionally, of those kids that need the intervention, the additional time during summer. And then one thing I think I've reflected on this a little bit is just increased communication with unduplicated families who have students that fall into that category, to really make sure we're making the ask and they feel like they know that they have this option for next school year. So that's where we're at now. And I also would like to say I plan to come back again very shortly. I might get a record for like out of the CNI office most visits. But there are a lot of things in the works currently, especially with the Right at School, our current partners, having conversations with them and figuring out really what is the next best step. And so today I just wanted to come and kind of give you an overview, reminder of ELOC, because it's coming at us, and how we're trying to approach it in a way that works for our community, our partnerships, and all of our families. So
Great, thank you. Any public comment for this? No. All right, any clarifying questions from the board? Yeah.
I think you said at the beginning, I think that the funding for next year is expected to be about the same as this year, despite the fact that 7 times as many kids eligible next year. Am I misunderstanding that? Because this year it was just TK.
So, no, I'm talking about, so we did get the funding for this year. It was for the full funding.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sorry, I'm sorry, that was confusing, yeah. So this year was kind of like our practice year, the statewide, was kind of like the practice year. So we received the funding, and we've been utilizing it, but we really focused on the access for TK this year.
Nice.
So it is based on our total unduplicated student number, TK through 6.
Okay. Do you have a sense of what percentage of the 352 kids that funding will cover if they?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet, because that depends a lot too of like what it looks like going forward with our partners, with this possible new partnership coming in. There's a lot of different factors that are pulling, that would need to be pulled together.
It's always, the state has a habit of underfunding mandates, so it's always helpful for us. The more precise we can be when we're talking to our representatives about how short they're leaving us at the end.
Yes, I understand. So I'll try to come back with a better answer
Thank you.
next time.
Appreciate that.
Any other clarifying questions? All right, board comment. I have one, it wasn't a clarifying question.
Yeah.
Question.
Okay.
So for like the 2 students from Almond who aren't paying, how much are we paying in tuition to, I guess in this case, YMCA?
Yeah. So it's whatever their regular fee would be at YMCA. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay.
But we get an invoice from YMCA. So those families just see a paid invoice where we take care of it. Like it comes to me first. I make sure it's all set, and then I send that off to the business office to get paid. So with the 2 right now, I really can't remember exact number off the top of my head right now. But that's something, again, next time I can bring forth some of those numbers for each current provider and what that kind of looks like, because it does vary across providers.
And as it relates to the students who are taking advantage of it, who are paying for it, are they paying directly to the provider?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it for my question.
And foster youth, we pay for them.
Mhm.
What about EL
Yeah.
students? Because it sounds to me, I would probably guess that a lot of the English language learner students are potentially also low income students. Do we charge any EL students?
EL students will be pay a fee based on a sliding scale that has yet to be determined.
Okay.
Will you go back to your slide that had the numbers?
Oops. This one?
Yeah, so Vladimir, in the SED column,
Yeah.
some of those students may be both low income and English learners.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to double count them.
Right,
which
they're
is
not
why-
counted double here though. So these, like this, one of these students could be also an EL, but I only counted them there as that one count. because that has the priority of receiving the, at no fee. Yeah, so these families, we can charge them, and add a sliding scale.
The last question, I'm sure everybody here wants to know what UPP stands for, because it does not stand for unduplicated pupil.
Okay, so this is what I recently learned. Also, never mind, I won't get into my little thing. It actually is supposed to be UP. It's supposed to be unduplicated people, and UPP is unduplicated student percentage. But they use this UPP term a lot, so then I got used to saying it, and then just earlier today, I was like, it should be just UP. But thank you for calling me out on that. I know I can count on you. No, it is confusing. It took me a while to,
I'm familiar with unduplicated.
yeah, UP.
Anybody, any other comments? Sally?
I kind of have this question. I'm not even sure how to phrase it. And I'm sorry, Catherine's already done with her presentation, but I was thinking about the school-based care and thinking about the ELOP stuff. And what about the kids who maybe do provide, like, as part of, I don't know if it's part of ELOP or not, but after school, perhaps school-based services for some of our kids who need that, because I would imagine some of our some of our UPPs may have other needs, like mental health care needs or.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Yeah, I know that like similar to the school day where we have different social and emotional and social development, different programs to use with our students, just based on kind of tier 1 support, whatnot. A lot of the partners and that we are looking at and that we currently have some sort of program like that too. So it not being a super intensive one, but definitely like the social and emotional aspect is part of the day or the afternoon or whatnot as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Steve, do you have anything? He does not.
Oh, he's shaking his head again. All right, thank you. And I will be back with more details as things fall into place more and more. So be back soon. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, on to the audited financial reports.
Last September, staff worked during the summer to close the financial record from the 21-22 fiscal year. Tonight, we have Paul from Siobhan Associates to do a brief review of the audit. Good news, there is no, it's an unmodified opinion, no findings, but a lot of work by Siobhan Associates, and I really want to really acknowledge Paul and all the hard work he's been doing for the district for many years. And I'll hand it off. This after his presentation, this will be an action item, and the recommended action will be to accept the annual audit of the 21-22 financial report.
Thank you very much, Eric, and thank you, board, for inviting me out again another year to present the results of the June 30th, 2022 audit. I feel like every time I'm up here, I'm giving you guys some new stuff. It's like GASB's always rolling out new standards and everything. So we had another exciting year. Lots going on. So I wanted to just jump right into it. I'll skip over all the boring stuff because I see a lot of familiar faces. I think you guys understand our audit process and audit standards. So just for starters, give you a little bit on the scope. So we've got this year for the because the district spent over $750,000 in federal awards, we were subject to the single audit. And so for this year, we selected the ESSER program. So again, with the whole COVID thing going on, things have changed quite a bit for you guys. Normally it's always special education every year, but last few years, as you guys know, it's changed up a little bit there. And then as part of our audits, we're doing the state compliance, a lot of new programs, stuff that you guys are talking about. So you guys are well aware of the new programs. So a lot of that was implemented in our audit. The bond measure as well. We looked at the measure and as part of our audit. So lots going on. So just to hit on some of the key financial highlights. I want to start out with here. This is the state of the net position. So if you look there about middle of the page, your long-term liabilities, it went down about $49.5 million. Very significant drop there. And then if you look at the row right below that, deferred inflow of resources went up $26.5 million. And so what a lot of that has to do with is your pension liabilities. I want to get into that a little bit so that you guys can understand what that means to the district and how that impacts you. So that on table 6 of your report, a copy of it, what this gets into is all your long-term debt. So the first line up there, the current interest bonds, that's just paying off the debts that, matured and just the normal payment that you have. But if you go down to the net pension liability, you see it drop $30.6 million. And so the way the pension, the PERS and STIRS works is that the plan itself has some accountants go in, they put together an actuarial report, and they use information that's from 2 years ago. They issue a valuation report, which is a year behind from what we do for the audit. So if you look back in history, 2 years ago, there were significant gains in the market, right? There's a lot, stock market was on fire. And so what that did was the contributions that the employees, the members, the district, the employers, and the state contributed to the plan, those contributions get invested. And it had huge returns, which lowered the net pension liability. And so that's what you're seeing there. And so let me back up a page and show you how that impacts this. Okay, so when the actuaries make these valuation reports, they have assumptions that they follow. So one of the assumptions is what they expect in terms of returns on these investments. When they're off, which they were, it hits deferred inflow of resources and gets amortized over a 5-year period. And that's why you see the huge increase in the deferred inflows and the big decrease in the long-term liability. So those two, to an extent, offset each other. So that's what you're going to see there. So jump forward a year, and if you remember this last year, the market tanked, and so all those gains that happened went away. And so in fiscal year 23, when we do that audit and prepare the schedule, you should see the complete opposite. There'll just be a complete flip-flop. Deferred inflows will go back down, and net pension liability go back up. So that's what we anticipate to happen. So for the time being, take this with a grain of salt, and it's market volatility. Okay. All right. So okay. So next up, what I wanted to point out is the new GASB 87. So GASB 87 is took effect this year, and basically what it did is it redefined the way we look at leases, the accounting standards and stuff like that. The old way, if anyone's familiar with accounting, there was operating leases and capital leases and whatnot. And so it kind of did away with some of those terminologies. Capital leases more or less basically became what's known as purchase financing agreements, right? And so that's really where there's a purchase option at the end, and it's in essence, rather than a lease, it's really like you're taking out debt and purchasing the asset just because it's that title transfer and whatnot. So that's the old way. With this, the ones that don't fall under that purchase financing agreement, GASB 87 kicks in, and there's an analysis that's done on certain, your leases and whatnot. But bottom line of it is, you've got a lot of leases out there. With the 10th site, you've got lease receivables, and as an offset, that's part of the accounting that's rolled out, this deferred inflow of resources, which is basically like your deferred revenue. But bottom line, you've got that top section basically outlines kind of a retrospective application of the guidance. And so it brings you to 7/1/21, which is your beginning balance for this year. So you see the lease receivable of 4.5 million, and then deferred inflows of 4.9. And so that gives you a prior period adjustment of the 489 you see down the far right column. And that's what you'll see on the financials. So when you see in that prior period adjustment, that's the implementation of GASB 87. And then the bottom section there is just the current year stuff of the, lease receivable, and then the recognition, of that amortized deferred inflows you see there. So it takes you to an ending balance of 2.9 on the receivable and a 3.5 on the deferred inflows. And in your financials, you see that reflected on the fund statements under the building fund, since it's related to that 10th site and those leases there. Okay. All right, and moving on. Back into my notes. Yeah. Okay, so talk about the fund balance, which is what you guys care about, since this is what you look at on a daily basis. So you see the changes, year over year, it's a decrease in total fund balance of just under $2 million. General fund went up by 3.3, and the bond interest redemption fund went down by 5.4. The bond interest redemption fund going down 5.4 is expected, since you had that huge payoff on a lot of your debts that came due. And so it's just taking the cash and paying the debt service there. And so to talk about the general fund a little bit, wanted to get into the financial trend. So you see here the 3-year kind of pattern. If you look at kind of right in the middle where it says change in fund balance, you see that the general fund is running at a surplus for the past 3 years. So you guys are heading, going in the right direction. You got a strong reserve there at 21.2%. So for a district your size and then kind of financing situation being locally funded and relying heavily on property taxes, having a strong reserve is very important. And so, yeah, 20.2%, you guys are in good shape there. All right, so if there aren't any questions on the financials, I'll get right into the audit results. Okay. All right, so we had a clean audit. We issued several opinions and reports, and so with respect to the financial statements, we issued an unmodified opinion, which is what you want to have. It basically means that the financial statements were fairly presented in all material respects. When it comes to your internal controls over financial reporting and on compliance, our audit identified or did not identify any deficiencies in internal controls that were considered to be material weaknesses. Our test disclosed no instances of non-compliance or other matters that were required to be reported under government auditing standards. And then your compliance, the district complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements of state programs. And sorry, next slide here. So overall, there are no exceptions to audit opinion, no material weaknesses, no disagreements with management, and no significant passed on adjustments. So overall, great job. District's doing well managing the finances. I know Eric's new and Lirio's helping out at coming in, and they picked up where the last team left off just fine. So it's a good transition.
All right, any clarifying questions on that? Doesn't look like we have any public comment. Any board comment? No, Steve? No. All right, thank you. So now this is a voting item. Can I get a motion to approve the audited financial report?
So moved.
I'll second.
Brian,
Yes.
Vladimir,
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and I say yes, 5-0. Thank you so much. Moving on to Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance mid-year report.
Right, so tonight we have the Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance. Fred is here with the pay. I see Curtis in the back. Thank you so much for coming. Stella is also here. Tonight they're going to get their mid-year report on the state of the district finances. So thank you.
Good evening, trustees, superintendent and staff, here to give mid-year report. I'm Fred Gallagher. I have to say first, as many of you, we're all volunteers on CACF. We find it, I'll speak for myself. I find it to be a very rewarding volunteer experience. And so hopefully we're adding value along the way. So with no further ado, let's jump into it. What we're going to cover. Go ahead and do it. Yeah. Okay. So go over an overview. We'll cover revenue, expenses, and then we'll have some recommendations. Current situation, as we just heard during the audit, the district is in a very good financial position. And when we look at we're running just a slight deficit this year. Short term looks great. The challenge is on the horizon. So when we look at what's going on with inflation, interest rates, the housing market, the retirement fund valuations, social and emotional learning, and we have the parcel tax renewed. There's a number of risks in from the district. as we look out over the next couple of years. So the recommendation we'll have at the end is, as we're going into the budget process in the coming months, we should be planning for lower tax revenue growth and higher expenses. And so those are the two things that we would be recommending to the board and to staff. And then we actually prepared these slides in December before we all went on vacation. So I can see the board's already taking some steps on the parcel tax renewal. So this is really affirming those steps there. So let me spend a couple minutes on this slide. So we I also head up the revenue subcommittee, and we did look through quite a bit of data to sort of parse through, okay, what should the district be expecting in terms of tax revenue growth? What you find really, as you all know, tax revenue growth is comprised of the 2% from Prop 13. And then there's a reassessment based upon the sale of a home or a remodel, something that happens with the property. And so we looked at both sets of what's happening there. And so if you look at the last couple of years, we've had a run up in home prices. If you go to the back of this presentation, you'll see what prices have gone up to. And we're actually seeing a price decline in recent months, and there's some prognostications that are in there as well. One thing I'd draw your attention to is about 25% of the AV is represented in homes that were sold in the last 3 years. So ones that were sold at higher prices. And so that's put some pressure on that 2% Prop 13 piece. So we got some pressure there. The piece that has even more pressure though is the resale. So we're seeing a decline in volume of home sales. There's a decline in price, but when you look at the numbers, the one that stands out to us is really the decline in the number of homes that are being sold. And you can hypothesize why that may be and whether that trend will continue, but the data is there. And so that's what we would, as you're looking at monthly home sales, that's the thing I would draw your attention to is the number. If that number continues to go down, that means less growth for the district and tax revenue. So we just spent a good bit of time on that. Just wanted to share that. You know, the thing we keep on, and even when we drew up these slides, we hadn't seen the big wave of corporate layoffs in town. And so it's always, is there going to be more bad news? All right, so everybody's hoping we'll see some good news, but are we going to see some more bad news? All that said, from a housing market perspective, if you look at where we are from a delinquency, if you look at short sales, these are things that we're not seeing. We're in a much better situation than we've been since we could collect data on CACF. And so, and also that the inventory of homes is while it's gone up in terms of number of days, it's still at a relatively healthy level. So we went, not only did we dig into the data, we also anecdotally spoke to some realtors, asked what they were seeing as well, just because you can actually start to see, all right, you know, there's a lag between what happens in the housing market and how it passes through the tax roll. So that's what we would, you know, leads us to believe we're going to have much lower growth than we had. So we spent some time coming up with some estimates of the future. You know, predictions are very hard, especially when they're about the future. And so these were ones that we came up with. And so we, instead of having what was in the budget from last year, which had us come down to a 5% growth, we had 1 year at 2%, 1 year at 3%. It's actually quite significant when you look over a 4-year period. It's a $10 million effect over the 4-year period. So something just to keep in mind as we're going again into budgeting. I think everyone's familiar with the parcel tax, so I'm going to gallop even faster on this one. So we have 2 parcel taxes. The 2016 tax is expires in June. At that point in time, it will be over 3% of revenue. We discussed at CACF some scenarios. All right, one we didn't spend a lot of time on was number 1, no renewal. There's really 3 scenarios we talked about, which is one was a straight renewal. The third was renewing 2016 adjusted for inflation. And then the third scenario was actually taking both of the taxes at the 2016 period and grossing those up for inflation. And so that's the range we got. I'm sure you know, trustees will discuss how you're going to approach this and you're taking all the steps here. So I also think you're aware of many of these factors, both from, macroeconomics, voter attitudes, timing of other projects. There's a lot of moving parts here, so our recommendation is by the end of the school year, let's not only have discussed it, but outlined a plan for the partial tax renewal. So, with that, I'm sure we'll be back.
Hi, I'm Kate, as you know, and I'll concur with Fred. This is my favorite volunteer activity. Don't tell anyone on the PTO. No, it truly is my favorite. Lots of smart people and, hopefully, I'll do as good a job as Curtis, who does this usually. Give me a grade, Curtis. Okay, so, basically, the subcommittee would, so I'm here on behalf of the Personnel and Expenses Subcommittee, and we want to point out two topics of concern, one short-term and one long-term. And one thing to note, though, is we're highlighting two areas, but they are not the only areas that you guys have to consider. So you guys have lots of stuff to consider, but we'll dig into two areas. So one is really personnel costs. We think they're likely to rise just due to pressure from many factors, including inflation and just kind of COVID burnout and all that. And the second is long-term concern, which is CalPERS and CalSTRS, which I think you've already seen earlier. So in the first area, we looked at the need for the district to hire and retain talent for the district. So when we looked at the attrition numbers, we didn't actually see an alarming increase in the numbers. They looked actually really surprisingly really good. But we really recommend we anticipate and prepare for an attrition increase. It might not be immediately present, but we were discussing as a group that sometimes you might see the impact of COVID, of burnout, of all these things kind of a few years afterwards. And in terms of hiring, we see that LASD has many components of a really competitive package. For instance, we see like great parental support throughout the schools, consistent performance across the schools, and small class sizes as being real perks for teachers. And we kind of recommend building upon this and make an even more competitive package. So things that we think may be helpful to think about is our relative competitiveness to neighboring school districts. So, how do we kind of compare to them? And we may want to adjust for compensation and targeted personnel demographics based on what we're seeing, right? I recommend digging in more there. Additionally, we also looked at other competitive advantages that aren't necessarily just strict salary, things like paid prep time for teachers or more paid prep time, one-time bonuses for new hires. So these are kind of things we also discussed in our group. On the retention side of personnel, we thought we should look more at the LATA survey, which I think you guys already looked at. We also looked at that as a subcommittee as well. And when we look at the survey results, we are really looking at it through the lens of asking, what benefits would be really desirable for the teacher and the staff that are already here. Things we think may be beneficial to them are more kind of flexible benefits like childcare FSAs. And again, that more paid prep time also came up as something that may be desired. And lastly, a big topic we talked about was perhaps the need for more in-classroom support. So our LASD test scores showed that there's no learning loss, which is great. So that's really fantastic to see. But like other parts of the country, I think something we conjecture is that a lot of kids are still dealing with socio-emotional impact from COVID. And so if we provide potentially, more aids, for example, for teachers, that's really beneficial for students and teachers alike. And that's a great benefit and asset to our district. All right. So this one was fun. I got to learn a lot about CalSTRS and CalPERS. Actually, this is why I like the committee. I was like, wow, this is so educational. And Curtis is so helpful in explaining these too. So I will try to summarize this. So the second area we talked about was long-term cost pressures. And we know because of the economy, we saw this earlier tonight, that the employer contribution rates to the retirement funds have increased, right? And so for the last 2 years, the state has used budget surpluses in the general fund to address unfunded obligations, to reduce our district's immediate payments. But one thing we thought about is, really not expecting that for the future and anticipating that district contributions will grow over time. And lastly, this is a slide showing the same landscape for CalPERS. See and read this, but it says essentially the same thing. So overall, I think the message here is that we should just expect and address these cost pressures as growing, even if we may not be immediately, alarmed by them.
And so that really kind of the next steps coming out of this are really just as we're going into budgeting. Plan for, expect that we'll have lower revenue growth, higher expenses, and then I think the district is already moving forward on the personal tax removal. So with that, if there's any questions or comments, back over to you.
All right, any public comment? Don't see any? Any board comment? Brian?
Just a question, something that has been in previous CACF recommendations is dedicating part of the bond fund as a sinking fund for facilities, which obviously isn't on this slide. So I'm just wondering if that's a change of opinion or a change of focus.
Yeah, I should have given, so we're actually taking that up in the second half. So in the full year. So the two things that we'll be working on is enrollment. We'll be working with the demographer on that, as well as what we are calling deferred maintenance. So those are the two projects for the second half of the year. I should have mentioned that.
Sorry.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, no worries. That's a good question. So
Yes, Brian.
I have a question for Pepe, because you certainly like pension benefits and all that kind of stuff. Do you know what the target for the state is for unfunded liabilities? Is it 0 or is it 25%? Is it?
I don't know. I think Eric might be the best person to answer that potentially.
Good pass off, yeah.
I mean, it's a great question, so I would defer to the expert.
Okay.
I'm by no means any expert on unfunded liabilities, but at this time, at the governor's proposal, there are going to be no increases in CalSTRS for the employer contribution. We think that's going to remain relatively flat. But an actuarial report was done by CalPERS, and most likely all projections are that the rate will go from 25.37 to 27% next year for the CalPERS employer contribution. And then the following year, it's going to go to 28.20. And CalPERS is for mostly our classified staff. So we are, it's not funded. And just like what Paul was saying with the stock market volatility, all the pension plans invest heavily in the market. And so because of that rates, they did a report and they said, yeah, it looks like we need to have the employer contributions can go up. So we're planning on that. I'll talk about that in the February meeting for the governor's proposal.
Okay. My question was, what's the target do you know what the target for the unfunded liability percentage is for the government?
I don't.
Or they just do the best they can?
All right, that's a great question. I could ask Newsom if he had given
Are you answering your calls?
pretty busy probably.
Thanks, Victor.
Shelley, anything?
No, this is great. Thank you.
Steve? No, he says no. I feel like I speak for him. That was wonderful. I have no extra questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Very
Thank
enlightening.
you to you and the team for all the work.
Yeah,
You got it.
no, we really appreciate
Got
the work you guys. Thank you. Moving right along to the next page.
Yeah.
10th site CEQA update.
Yes, so we have Randy Kenyon and friends. Randy's here in person. We have Lisa Nelson, and Amy Cox, who are here to talk about our CEQA update.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I'll be presenting the slides, but that Amy Hughes Cox, our consultant, is here as well. Through the power of Zoom, of course, and Lisa Gelfman, our architect, and Peter Ingram, also here. Available to answer questions. The purpose of the agenda really is to bring the project description, the 10th site project description in front of you prior to it going out in the public. And we want you to see it and be comfortable with it. There's nothing surprising in it. We've talked about it many times in the past. And as a reminder, we're required under CEQA to do an environmental impact study. And this project description underpins that study, okay? it assumes the maximum possible use of the site. We've talked about that, and the maximum impact. We covered the purpose already tonight, so I'm not gonna say anything more about that. Pulled the slide from the last board meeting, December 12th, where we had a brief update on CEQA. This just kind of shows us where we are in the process. And we're now here where we're hoping to get the project description sort of viewed by you, giving us the go ahead to actually put it out in the public and develop a draft environmental impact study. So I know you've seen this in your packet, so a few key points that we've already talked about. Maximum build out of the property, right, is giving us flexibility. We note that the board has not made any decisions yet about the type of school or the size of the school, whether it's 900 students as we're studying or less. And as I mentioned earlier, after tonight, our consultant can prepare the draft environmental impact report. And the process culminates hopefully by the end of this year in a final EIR. I'm trying to do this now. A final EIR and certification at the end of this year. So key milestones, these dates are approximate. Amy would kill me if I, we're holding her to the exact date. So these are approximate, depending on how things go. I know she's listening. But gives you a sense, and again, I'm looking at the bottom line, 5 days prior to the end of the calendar year, we should be filing a notice of determination after you've had a chance to approve the project under CEQA. The project description summary, just to summarize what's in it, you have it as part of your backup. It's a lengthy document. The first bullet here is actually a quote from it, right? Existing commercial buildings will be demolished. A new 2-story school could serve up to 900 students, along with playing fields, parking area, and hardscape. Again, we're talking about up to 900 students, maximum capacity, so up to grades K through 8, maximum possible use. And we include the shared open space with the city, the play fields. And I note in here that they've requested artificial turf and lighting, and we're going to study that, but there's an alternative to that, which would be grass and no lighting. So again, covering all the bases possible. Next slide was just a review or a bringing it back from the last board meeting, the schematic design that Lisa put together. It did kind of give an overview of what the campus layout looks like and some of the key terms on the right. In conclusion, you don't need to take any specific action tonight. This is an information item. We just want you to be comfortable with the project description. Make sure that you've seen it before it goes out in the public view. And we're here to answer any questions you might have. Amy's here to answer any specific questions you might have. And Lisa and Peter. So with that, Jessica, I'll turn it back to you guys.
All right, thank you. Any public comment? No. All right, board comment, question? No, wow. I guess I had one question on as key milestone. I wanted to understand the filing of notice of determination, the 5 days after board approval of project. Is it like approving the project to go forward? What does that mean?
I'm gonna let you, who's the expert.
Yeah.
Yeah, Randy, do you want me to try to answer that one?
Yes.
I know you-
So when you take action on the project, it's to say that you basically approve the project moving forward to more detailed designs and being constructed. And then you file a notice of determination with the county clerk, and that starts the period of potential challenge to the EIR. You want to file that because it's a 30-day challenge period, otherwise it's 180 days. So you want to do that for sure.
Okay, Great, that's good to know. All right. Any other questions? Steve, did you have any questions? Sorry. No, he does not. All right, and this was an information item, so
No
thank
comments.
you. No more comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks, Amy, Lisa, and Peter.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, moving on to TBWBH Proxy Measures Consulting Agreement.
Yes, so as you heard from CACF tonight, we do have a parcel tax that was passed in 2016. Does that sound right?
Oh, yeah.
That will expire after their 8 years in 2025. So we wanted to make sure that we were paying attention to what is our plan for all of the different scenarios that CACF highlighted. So in front of you tonight, we have a contract with TBWBH Props and Measures, who you all have used in the past to help you determine a plan and to ultimately help run, if that's what the board decides to move forward with, a parcel tax within the community. So tonight, we ask that you approve that, and then we will get started in doing lots of research and fun.
I don't see any public comment, any board questions. or
What is the cost?
The cost was about $7,000 per month.
Yes. And it included, it didn't include certain things like if we had any others and stuff like that, but there was a pricing schedule for that. And I had asked the question, and I'll just ask it again. This covers the whole thing, like if we went into a campaign, this is the contract, right? Okay. And this does not include polling.
Correct. Next week, I believe we will be bringing you a contract with EMC. Does that sound right? Who I believe we've used in the past for specific polling. And EMC works closely with us and TBWBH to develop even what are we polling around, right?
Exactly. Any other questions? Steve, do you have any questions or comments? Fine. All right. It's getting easy. Can I get a motion to approve the contract with TBWBH Props and Measures?
So moved.
I'll second. Brian,
Yes.
Vladimir,
Yes.
Shelley.
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and I say yes. Moving right along. To the 2023-24 district calendar.
Yep, so we brought this to you last week to look at the proposed calendar based off of MBLA, our partner high school district calendar, included teacher feedback, administrator feedback. I believe that you've gotten some feedback from community members, but tonight it's coming to you to consider approving.
Okay. No public comment, no parents here tonight. Any public board comment or questions? And the only the concern we got is people didn't like us going into our December break as late as we are, but it's based on the high school calendar. So I did explain it to the parents saying, I get it. You know, it does kind of suck, but it is what it is. And we're doing it, and you'll like this. She has no high school students. You'll like this in the future when things match. Anyway, so do I get a motion to? Yeah.
I just want to make a comment. So I second all of that.
Yeah.
We've gotten a lot of parent comment in the past about lining up with Christmas break better, which we totally understand. Fortunately, I think knock on wood, things will get back to more normal the following year.
Yeah.
As the calendar rotates and a leap year pushes everything around.
Yeah.
I did want to say I appreciate working with the teachers to move one of our professional development days to the same as the high school professional development day to try to make it easier for parents who have kids in both systems. So we do try to do that as much as we can. But we are sort of coming in secondary to the high school, which has more compelling drivers of their calendar.
Yeah, they have more requirements, drivers, et cetera. All right.
Also bigger.
But we're super strong too.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Do I have a motion to approve the 23-24 district calendar?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, Brian
Yes.
and Vladimir.
Yes, it's getting late.
It is. Shelley. And Steve.
Later here, yes.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, he
He
takes the
wins.
cake. And I vote yes, so 5-0. All right, moving on to board and administration comment. No, Terry, nothing for you, Terry, Eric,
Thank you.
Sandra. Good, did mine. All right, Brian.
Nothing for me.
Vladimir.
So I'm a member of the Legislative Action Committee of the Santa Clara School Boards Association, and we have upcoming some meetings with Mark Berman and Josh Becker. I'll be attending those, and we'll pound on them for more money.
Yes, great. Shelley.
Nothing.
Steve, you got anything? He's shaking his head no. All right, I had an ambassador meeting. I had the LASD community give us back, and that was our first distribution in the ring. But well, I thankfully was in the van, but we were operating out of the van. So there were some people they were standing out. We had the same amount of people. So it is a want, whether rain or sun. And I have a challenge team, and then coming up, we have the FCC FBA meeting. This weekend, I am helping train new trustees. There are 37 new trustees in our county alone.
Wow.
So I was surprised. We didn't think there was that much turnover, but there was. And then we, thanks to the help of Mr. Hazelton, we'll be going to a dinner put on by the CTA on January 31st at 5 in San Jose. So I look forward to that. So that's all I got. Meeting adjourned.